I remember my mother walking into my grandmother's bedroom, and I was sleeping in the bed beside my grandmother. I was 7 years old, and she said, "We've lost everything." And I said, "What do you mean we've lost everything?" And she said, "Our house burned to the ground last night. All my father's savings were under a mattress,
Oh no.
and the only thing he saved was a dog." That changed me forever.
In my experience, you never know what's going to happen. So if in doubt, it's good to say yes. About a month ago, the River Cafe was asked to cook for a grand party at the Serpentine Gallery celebrating the dynamic company Consello and its founder, chairman, and CEO, Declan Kelly. So when they invited me to join, I said yes. From the moment I entered the crowded room, I knew I'd made the right decision. Declan and I were introduced. We covered the bases, our views on the politics of the day, our love for our children, a shared feeling of how lucky we are to work with the best people, and of course, the importance of food in our lives. So here we are today in the River Cafe on a Saturday morning, Declan with me with Declan, confirming that when you don't know what's going to happen, it's good to say yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Ruthie.
you for coming. We can go back to the beginning, and I can ask you about growing up in Ireland.
I grew up in
Tell me
Tipperary
where.
in the
Where
south.
is Tipperary?
Tipperary is right in the middle of the country. It's in the Republic of Ireland. And
There's a song, isn't there?
yes, there's a long way
It's
to
a long
Tipperary.
way to
Exactly.
Tipperary.
That's the one.
It's a long
And I
way
think that was sung
to
by
home.
soldiers in World War One or World
Yeah.
War Two to rhyme with some sentence in the song, and the word Tipperary was the right
Was-
rhyming word,
yeah,
and
it's a
that's where it
beautiful
ended up.
word.
It's a
That's
marching
right.
song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up there, and I still
What
go home
was it
there.
like? What? Tell me about your
My
family.
upbringing was happy but very difficult. We had no running water in my house until we were, I was 7 years old.
What year was that? That would
I
have
was
been
born
in
in
the
1968,
68,
and in
and there's still
1970.
no running water. And
Yeah.
so what did you do for water?
Oh, we had cousins next door, and we went there, and there was a well, and I don't make it sound like we were any worse off than anybody
Yeah,
else. We weren't.
yeah.
I really would never do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I grew up in an amazing community with lots of people who had things a lot worse than we did, and I had a loving family and all of that. But it was difficult, and I remember it has really formed me from
It
the
has,
inside.
yeah.
I remember, the harshness of life, and I remember selling potatoes with my father, and we had a field. We were very small farmers. We had so few cows that I could name each one of them. We had 12. At the end of the day, it was a tough life. My parents both worked 3 jobs.
Yeah.
They were always working, and
What jobs would they do? Just anything
my
that came
father
along.
was a very small farmer, manual
Yeah.
labor. They both left school when they were 12 years old.
12.
12.
And this was they left school probably in the late
the
50s.
Yeah. I was blessed to have a loving family. My parents' complete devotion to my education and my brother's education, my mother in particular, she would stand in a field when we'd be doing something, whatever it was, bringing in the cows or doing something, and she would say, your whole life is dedicated to making sure you never have to do this
Really?
when you go to college or if you go to college. And always remember that's what you're here to do, which is to escape from this. Not the societal aspect or the community,
No.
which was so important to us and still is. And my best friends are still where I grew up in
They
wonderful
are?
village. Absolutely. But it was all about hardship and escaping hardship. And, the relationship with food was not, we didn't eat for pleasure. We ate for existence. And because you were hungry. And I have... so my relationship with food evolved over time as well when I was able to afford to eat better food.
Yeah.
But it's it's really interesting because Ireland is an amazing country and it's gone through many, many iterations and perhaps now is living its best life because the country has done so
Yeah,
well.
it has.
But when I grew up, it was very different. It was high unemployment. There was lots of people leaving the country all the time.
Yes.
And it was a scary time.
Yeah. Did you think your mother, when she told you that about escape this life or, do what you
Do
gotta
better.
do,
Yeah.
what would she like to have done? Do you think was that her?
She's the most amazing person
Yeah,
I've ever
tell
met.
me, tell me.
She has done so many things for so many people, so many charities. She's raised money. She's worked in the community. She was out 7 nights a week, always doing something for other people. she is the most extraordinary person I've ever met in my
I'd
life.
love to meet her.
And she's still with us, thank God, and she's in our family home in Tipperary. And she made me feel alive every day. And I owe everything to her. When I was younger, my mother would always sort of pack my lunch, and we used to get up early in the morning because we would milk the cows before we go to school. And you'd go and feed them in the winter in the dark and bring hay. And my father would already be gone to work somewhere else. My mother would probably be milking the cows before she went to another job.
Amazing.
And so you'd bring in the cattle, then you'd feed them, then you'd come and have breakfast, and then you'd cycle to the bus to go to school. Sounds like it's like 150 years ago. But that whole concept of sort of living your life in a different way, when I go back there, which I do very often, thank God, every couple of weeks or months, it stands in front of me when I'm there, and I'm met by it every single time. And it forms you on the inside, but in a good way. You also have many happy memories. It's not just moments of worrying about what happened in the past. But it has definitely left a mark on me. There's no doubt about that.
You mentioned when we were talking this morning, and you mentioned it just before, almost as soon as we sat down, that you witnessed and experienced having your house burned down.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
I was 7 years old. My parents were out at something, and I was with my grandmother in her house, which was about 4 miles away. I remember my mother walking into my grandmother's bedroom, and I was sleeping in the bed beside my grandmother. I was 7 years old, and she had our dog in her arms, and everyone was covered in soot and dirt, and she said, "We've lost everything." And I said, "What do you mean we've lost everything?" And she said, "Our house burnt to the ground last night, and all my father's savings were under a mattress."
Oh, no.
And the only thing he saved was a dog. And
So they came and saw it in flames.
in flames,
and he ran in to get the dog.
And I remember the local community coming to my grandmother's house about 3 days later, and they were going to take up a collection to help the family, which again speaks to the community I came from. They would do it today. It's an incredible place, incredible. It's really unique. And my mother said, "No, we're good. We're going to figure this out." And my father built our house that my mom now lives in, and I lived with my grandmother for a year.
Do you know how the fire started?
Yes, electric blanket went on fire.
Oh, no.
So, however, that changed me forever.
Yeah.
And it
In the sense that you experienced loss.
deep trauma
and loss. Yeah.
and uncertainty and fear and staring into the abyss of the unknown. However, again, I view it as a blessing, because if it hadn't happened, I would not have been able to view life the way I've done it. And I remember my grandmother telling me everything was going to be okay, and she was right. And she was an incredible woman. When we talk about food memories,
Yes. Tell me, what was it like? Well, very often, I say on the podcast that the people that I talk to, so many of them remember their grandmother's food almost more than their mother's.
Totally.
And what was your grandmother's
She
food like?
used to make the greatest white soda bread I've ever had in my life. I remember her making it with flour on the table, and then she would put it out on the window of this little cottage she lived in, and the smell of it would go all over the yard, and you would instantly be hungry. And then in the evening, we would cut slices of it, and she would put thick butter on it, and she would put it on a very
Irish
long
butter.
fork,
Yeah.
really long fork, and she would hold it over the actual wood fire.
Oh, so she put the butter on and then toast
Right,
it.
and it used to drip into the fire.
Wow.
And then we would stare into the fire, and she would say, "Let's look at the faces in the fire." And we would see and make up stories about who was living in the fire. And I remember that bread, and breaking that bread and eating it, and I can taste it to this minute. And it was the most comforting moment that I would have in my day, my week, my year. And I loved that experience, and I think about it all the time.
Have you made it? Do you have her recipe?
I am a terrible cook.
Can you
and
get
an
someone
even
to
worse
make it
baker.
for you?
But my mother
Yeah.
Used to make it, and
Yeah.
I believe she has the recipe.
Oh, I
so
should
I'm
get
going
it.
to ask her. You're right, it's a good idea.
No, that's not. Did you, when you lived with your grandma, did your parents live there as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so you all
together.
lived in the house
Yeah.
with and built.
And then my father built a house, and then we moved and went from there.
It's interesting because I think that what you're talking about again is something that I often say, because I witness it a lot in the restaurant, is if I could kind of teach my children or my grandchildren anything, it would be resilience. How you empathy. I say empathy and resilience. So empathy has to be in there, because if you're just a resilient person, then you think, well, I did it, I managed it, I can do it. Right. Why can't they? But I think that being able to suffer as you did, or have some experience like you did, and then to carry on. And I see it in the restaurants. I see the ones who have a really bad experience or a day or something happened, and really are affected by it deeply, which is fair enough, and the ones that are affected by it deeply and go back to work.
Yeah, I mean, we all deal with adversity in different ways, and I don't want to dwell on it too much as being who I am, because I guess it's at the root of who I am. But at the same time, I have been very, very, very fortunate in my life in so many ways. And there have been so many serendipitous moments that have guided me in certain directions that would otherwise not have happened. So I'm very blessed to have the life I have, and I know that, and blessed to have the family I have and the friends I have and the things I've been able to do in my life. But at the same time, I never take anything for granted.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah.
And I'm always afraid that you go back.
Had anybody in your family been to university before?
No. I remember my mother used to clean a meat factory at night. She used to clean the offices, and I would go and help her whenever I was available and able.
What age?
I would have been 17.
Right.
But, she did it for many years. And in those days, when you wanted to get your results from to figure out if you got into college or not, you dialed a number, and they read out the results.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And so I remember calling from the phone in the office of the manager of the plant to find out if I was getting into university. And my whole life had been built up to this moment, because it was all a question of, if I didn't get into college, I didn't know what would happen. And I remember dialing this number and finding out that I got in. And both of us sat on the floor holding each other, crying our eyes out. I know, it's like a movie. I understand how it sounds.
Yeah, no.
And bawling our eyes out for 10 minutes and hugging each other, because everything that we had done had led up to this moment. It's interesting, because after I finished high school, or secondary school as we call it, I worked as a journalist in a local newspaper in
university.
Nina, when I grew up. So I had a full-time job.
While you were at college.
Right, so I used to drive, I guess, 120 miles every day. For 3 years to keep my job in the newspaper and go to college during the day and at night. And I would always come home to my mom for lunch. And so...
Did she lived near where you were? Where the newspaper was?
Exactly.
Right.
I remember one day I had this yellow Renault 12 car, and it was 1,000 years old. And my father and mother left the kitchen. They went out to look at the car while I was in having whatever lunch I was having. And my father said, "Those tires are so bald on your car. You'd be better off putting the tubes on the outside." Because I had driven so many hundreds and hundreds of miles. But I would look forward to that lunch, because it was like coming into a refuge for a little period of time and then going back out into the big bad world.
Wow.
But
was it so the job at the newspaper was...
I was a journalist. I was working.
But you went in the morning and stayed till...
I would go in the morning, and then I would drive to Galway, where I went to college.
Yeah.
And then I would study law and English literature at night until 10:30 at night.
Wow.
And then I would go again in the morning, early, then drive back to Tipperary for the newspaper, then go and have lunch, then go back to work, drive back up to Galway. I did that for 3.5 years. Yeah.
Did you have a social life at all? Or was
Not really.
No.
But it didn't care.
It doesn't matter.
I didn't care.
When my son went to Columbia, he wanted to have a job, and I thought, well, you're not going to be able to study and have a job. How are you going to make this work? And I called, being the parent, I called the dean of students. I said, what do you think I should do about the fact that my son wants to work and study? He said, the best students are the ones that have jobs.
Totally agree.
He said, because they learn really early that they have to manage their time, they have to be at work, they have to focus when they focus.
Yeah.
And he said the fact that and again, some do it, obviously because of need. He didn't have to do it because he needed to, but he wanted to, and he wanted to do both. And I think it was interesting that he said that. Maybe that is You know, how did you? Looking at this, I can't imagine how you did it though. That is really intense. That
You know, I think life is all about organization. I'm a very organized person. I'm maniacally, compulsively organized. I make lists every day. I live by what's
in the
on
morning
the list.
and the night, or
Always the night before I go to bed.
Okay, let's go into that. You get into bed and then you.
No, before I go to bed.
Before you go
I
to
will
bed.
do a list. It'll take maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes. No matter what happens, no matter where I am in the world, including Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a sad, admission, but there we are. And I have a list of all the things I have to do, and my day is not complete until I've done that list.
So would you go to bed with the list that you did the night before and think, oh, I didn't do that,
Yes.
I didn't do that, and
Drives
didn't do
me
that,
crazy.
so you do that and that and that.
Yeah. And so I did that when I was a student, and I did that when I was a kid growing up, and I did that when I was going to college. And so in order to be able to do these things, you have to be massively organized.
Yeah, you do.
And so I've carried that through my life. So what I agree with what the Dean of Admissions said to you about your son. People who have busy lives make time.
Yeah.
And if you want to give, I know it's an old saying, but if you want to give a busy person, get something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah.
And I find that to be true also in life.
When you then were in university and you were doing the two jobs, did you then carry on into journalism? Was that what you decided? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was 12 years
did,
old.
really?
From 12. I had a teacher called Mrs. O'Shea who came up one day and she said, you should become a journalist. And I said, what's a journalist?
Yeah.
And she started explaining it to me, and she said, let's pretend and let's write a little news story. And that day I decided. And so it sounds crazy, I know, but for the next 6, 7, 8 years, everything I did was dedicated towards becoming a journalist. And I was very lucky. My uncle, John Joe, brought me to a local guy called Pat Ryan, who owned the local newspaper, still does.
In Tipperary.
Yeah, in a place called Nina. And he said, this is my nephew, and he'll work for free. He just wants to get a start. And Pat said, well, sure, let's give him a shot.
Amazing.
And so I covered
What did you cover?
I used to cover hurling games and football games, and eventually a very kind man called Jerry McLaughlin, and who has since passed, and a friend of mine, Peter Gleason, who just retired, they gave me a chance to be a junior reporter. And I remember I was making £172, which at the time was a fortune, and
£172
per month. And it was a fortune, and before tax. And so I was using all of this, and I would go and cover court cases, and I would go and cover accidents, and I would go and cover murders. Not that they happen very often, once in 10 years, but things like that. And so you grew up very quickly, and you met adults, and you were forced to get engaged. And I was always interested in the human condition, and I love to write, and I love to read, and I was sold from day one. And then, I became a journalist. I worked in that local newspaper, then went to another one locally, and then I became in a daily newspaper in Cork. A newspaper called the Cork Examiner.
Beautiful Cork, yeah.
And now it's called the Examiner. But it was a daily newspaper. It had a morning edition and an evening newspaper. And I worked there for a number of years, and they were some of the happiest years of my life.
Do you remember the food you ate when you were working as a journalist?
Some of the best stories were found in pubs, and some of the best people that you met were in pubs. And
a lot of singing in pubs
lots
too,
of
right?
singing in Ireland especially, and storytelling. And you grew up around men if you were a boy, and you saw them extract stuff from people so it could appear on the page, and to be able to get people to tell you things they didn't want to tell you. That whole art is lost. And so I
think it is
loved
lost?
it.
Yeah.
It's harder now
in the digital age. You think that
and also I think there's something that's happened in the last decade or so. I think truth is now the definition of truth has been lost forever.
Do you think?
Nobody really.
It's opinion, is it?
And I don't mean journalism. I don't mean that there aren't journalists who tell the truth. That's not what I mean. What I mean is we have a difficulty understanding what's real and what's not because of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
And I know I'm stating the blind and the obvious because with AI you can do everything. But I just and journalism in some respects has gotten easier, but in some respects it's gotten a lot harder because for people to actually break through and write or say or do something that is differentiated is much harder because there's so much more competition. And the things that we used to care about as journalists, people think about different things now. But back then, it was an art.
Yeah.
And
Did you ever do it? Were you ever a foreign correspondent? Did you ever sent to other
yeah, I traveled all over the
places?
world. I was really lucky. I was just thinking on the way here this morning. In 1992, I covered the Olympics in Barcelona.
Did you?
And I carried a little briefcase with me called a
Yeah.
Tandy.
Yeah.
And when the 100 meters was over, you raced down to a phone box.
Yeah.
You placed a collect call to the newspaper, and then they would answer the phone. And then you would have the words on a word processor, and you would have two cups on both ends.
Yeah.
And she would say at the other end, usually the typesetter, press send now. And you press send, and then you put a cup over the mouthpiece and a cup over the earpiece, and all the words would go down the page, down the line, and it would
That was
appear on the other
92.
end. And that was in 1992. And
That
I
was
carried
pretty
this
radical,
briefcase.
wasn't it? That was
That
really
was incredible.
radical.
I
Yeah.
thought I was, a superstar
yeah.
carrying around this little
Amazing,
briefcase.
yeah. That's
But
something,
back then it was
I remember meeting Don McCullen, who, the
amazing.
greatest hero
Amazing.
of war, and just the process where he would take a photograph in Saigon during the Vietnam War and Ethiopia during the
Right.
famine, and getting it back to London, getting it on the plane, the roll of film, which would have to be put on the plane if they could get a plane, get it to London, get it to the developer, get it to the paper, and now you
Extraordinary.
see what we do, It's
I mean,
incredible.
I started out in journalism with the typewriter where you go ka-tunk, 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 and like that.
Yeah.
And I would carry it around. It was like
Yeah.
30 pounds. And
But did you eat well in Cork? Did you?
I mean,
did
Cork
you-
is an incredible...
It is. Ballymaloe is
Right,
the-
well, Darina is amazing.
Darina, yeah.
Cork is one of the greatest culinary capitals in the
Yeah, it
world,
is,
in my
it
humble
is,
opinion.
yeah.
You've got places like Kinsale,
Yeah.
which have incredible restaurants.
Yeah.
You've got the English market in Cork. I mean, but when I'd gotten to Cork, life had changed, and thank God I was able to afford to do things, and my whole experience with life had changed by then, thank God. So, I think that's when I really began to start to enjoy food.
Was there a restaurant column, I wonder, or a food column in the paper?
Oh, there were. And also, I know this is not what you meant, but there was a fear associated with somebody coming to grade a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm on
you
that
of course,
side.
know that
yeah.
very
You
well.
make or break,
Right. It's
Yeah.
like theater, opening night.
Yeah. Adrian Gill, he could
Yeah.
walk in and say, it wasn't even about the food, but, I walked in and the lighting was on a woman's face and it made me never
Right.
want to walk in that room again. And there goes the
all-
restaurant.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, back in the day, having food columns, and for a period of time, I used to serve as a night editor, a news editor in the
right.
newspaper. And so you'd have these older gentlemen coming up, usually having had 2 or 3 beers or a cigarette or whatever, and they'd say, well, this is my piece, and you have
Yeah.
to go,
Okay.
I need you to do
maybe
this, I
not.
need you to do
Yeah.
that, maybe not. And so I was always sort of trying to negotiate with people.
Yeah.
And so that gave me the skill to do that. But when you were covering food or covering anything that people consumed, I always felt that the journalist who was writing that stuff had a softer touch.
Oh, do you? In what way?
Because they needed to humanize
Yeah. That's
on the page
yeah. That's
what was going on in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's such a great shame that food columns have disappeared.
I agree.
It's different than writing about hard news or writing about sports or things that actually happened.
Yeah.
Whereas you walk in and you form an impression. It's
Yeah.
it's the ultimate subjectivity. And I think it's a great shame that has been lost.
What happened after Cork? How
After
did you-
Cork, I couldn't afford my mortgage after a while. I had a house, and I remember I was making 18,000 a year, and I needed to make 22 in order to pay my mortgage. So I went to Dublin, and I applied for a job in public relations, and got it. And
But how old were you then? About 20s?
it was in 1996, so I guess I was 28.
Yeah. And you went to Dublin.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
big city. I went to the
Big-
Big Smoke.
yeah,
And my
yeah.
mother asked me,
Was she okay
are
about
you
that?
sure this is going to be okay? So I'm
Yeah.
like, I think I'll manage. So I went and did that. And then after a couple of years, I decided, I was going to strike out on my own. And I did with a partner who's still practicing in Dublin, a great guy called Jackie Gallagher. And we started a firm together. And it was in communications and public relations. And the reason I did that is that I would phone up PR people all the time,
Yeah.
trying to, figure out what the story was in a particular day or a newspaper.
You did, as a journalist,
Yeah,
you would call
and I
them,
figured, you know what, I think I can
be
do
on
that.
that side of the table.
And so
Yeah.
poacher term gamekeeper or whatever, and I did it and I liked it.
Were there the kind of madman business lunches? Did you
Oh,
have
yeah.
those?
Oh, yeah.
With the two dry martinis?
Oh yeah,
and
back then it was different. I mean, again, this was
Yeah.
in Dublin, and
Yeah.
you would have days where Friday was taken very seriously as a day where you didn't work after lunch, and all things
I
like
think
that.
that was probably international. It might not have
Yeah.
been just Dublin.
Yeah,
only.
yeah.
But I think work-wise, do they still have those lunches? Do you go off for
No,
long lunches?
no,
And
God no. That's a thing
gone,
of the
is
past. Mad Men, I think, is
Yeah.
glorifies it, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't exist. I mean, in New York,
Do you like the food in New York? Do you think
I
the
love it.
restaurants are really... Because
Yeah.
you travel so many places. Do you think it's a city of food?
yeah.
It is.
I mean, it's very hard to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something like 12,000 restaurants,
Wow.
and some of the best restaurants, as you know, in New
Yeah.
York, are the simplest hole in
Yeah,
the wall
I agree.
restaurants
Yeah.
that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And a lot of the experience in New York is about who you meet when you're there.
Yeah.
And it's such a melting pot, and it's such a wonderful place. I mean, every day, and I've lived there for 27 years. Every day I still look up at the big buildings. I still marvel. It's the greatest country in the world, no matter what happens from one year, one decade, one president. There's this spirit of you're never beaten. You can always achieve what you set out to achieve. People don't judge you if you fail. They want you to. It's just, it's an amazing place. And, we all have different views at different times about what's going on in America at any given moment in the history of the country. But one thing is true, for me at least. I mean, I love Ireland. I'm deeply proud to be Irish, and I'm an Irishman.
Seems like your
thick and
identity
through.
is pretty...
But I've grown in America. I've now lived half my life in both places, and I'm both Irish and American.
Yeah, I'd like
And,
to talk about that.
yeah.
Because you became politically engaged as well.
Yeah.
Going from journalism to public relations to advising to mentoring, but also you were crucial in the work that you did with Hillary Clinton.
I served in government with Secretary Clinton under President Obama, and
What was that like, working and going back to Ireland, but this time as in
as
the
a diplomat.
government? Yeah, what was that like?
I have a deep love for Northern Ireland, and one of the promises I made myself when I went into government, which was it's the greatest honor of my life, and nothing I've ever done or will ever do will be more important or better or more rewarding. I already know that. I promised myself I would go and visit every town in Northern Ireland over the time I was
At
there.
what point
and I
did you?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, and it is a most unique, special, and misunderstood place. And I'm still deeply involved there. I'm involved in Queen's University, and I do a number of things there. Fantastic institution. But, never bet against the Irish people, and never bet against Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
It's been through so much, and it'll take decades for it to fully change. But it is a place of it has many gifts, and I love it deeply. And when I was there, it was such a privilege to be able to work with the people who were there on both sides of the religious divide. And, what I try to do when I'm there every time is to give more hope to people, because they, when I was going there back then, there were generations of people living in the same house. You'd have a grandchild, a father, and a grandfather. And all of them were unemployed. And the unemployment rate was extremely high.
What year was that?
2009, 2011, those 3 years in that period. But, Northern Ireland has done so well.
Yeah.
And it has, picked itself off the ground so many times. Yeah. And there's so many exciting things happening there. And one of the best educated workforces in the world. And, now, of course, you go there and it's a much better place, but it still has a huge amount of work to do to get to where it needs to be. But one thing I can tell you is if you want to see an indefatigable spirit, you go there. Never bet against the North. I promise you, it'll always come out okay in the end.
And did you ever consider, though, being political full time?
No, you have to decide. Do you want to advise companies and CEOs on what they do, or do you want to be involved in business and politics? And I know lots of people do both, but I didn't want to do that. And I felt like I'd given 10 years of my life to politics and public life in that respect, either being active in politics or being an advisor. And, I still get called a lot by politicians, by prime ministers and leaders of different countries to give advice on what I think is happening in the world. And if I'm asked, I'll give it. But I don't want to be involved in politics, if I can put it that way, anymore.
Yeah.
And it's my brother is a politician.
What does he do?
He is a politician in Ireland and has been for 3 decades. And, it's a very tough life.
Yeah, it is.
And there's no appreciation for anything that you do. It doesn't matter who you are, what political party. At the end of the day, you can count on one hand the number of politicians who've left the stage of their own accord.
Yeah.
And said
goodbye
to all that. Ultimately, it doesn't end well. And we have as a world, we have a very unforgiving attitude, with some reason, towards politicians. But at the end of the day, I believe the majority of them are trying to do the right thing.
I do too.
And they're good people who got into public service because they like
it.
And they get a hard knock and a hard, scorecard. And I just think, for me, that wasn't something that attracted me.
In all your travels, do you have a memory of a grand dinner in China or in France or?
I would say these formal events where a lot of effort goes into preparing the meal and the menu and the food, it's very important, of course, because of the message that it conveys. But ironically, the vast majority of people who go to those events spend most of their time talking and not really focusing on the food. Which sounds
no,
weird.
but it gets them around a table.
Invariably, people end up talking about things and the food becomes kind of incidental, which is always a shame. The most valuable experiences that I've had in business have been where you can combine the two. And a lot of that has to do with something you talked about last night, which is, where you choose to eat and who you choose to eat with and the proximity to each other when you're around the table. And I really like meeting people who think about that before they do it.
It's so good that we're here. And you did it brilliant. I think I might as well hang up my job. I think there is room for the two of us in the podcast world.
Indeed.
But, to anybody listening to this one, listen to Grey Matter, because I've never been asked questions like that before. How did that happen, Grey Matter?
Grey Matter, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Secondly, Grey Matter came about because I spent the last 35 years dealing with, I'm blessed to say, the top CEOs in the world. And I'm always fascinated by the person behind the person, just as I am with you. And we all get to see the public figure that's out there doing whatever they're doing in their careers. But very few people get to see them behind the firewall. And I spend my life with them behind the firewall.
Yeah.
And I often find that people don't get to think about, how do you think? How do you do what you do? One of the things, I've been fascinated with Churchill my entire life. And everyone's written extensively, thousands of books. But what I'm fascinated by with Churchill is, why did he think the way he thought? What were the formative reasons for him to be that way? Exceptionally brilliant, but why? And so I decided to do Grey Matter because there are thousands of podcasts out there, but I wanted to do it around the idea of how somebody is formed and how they think. So the rules of engagement are, you're not allowed to talk about dollars and cents. You're not allowed to talk about your products. You're not allowed to go out and promote yourself. It's actually to make yourself vulnerable and talk about what's in here behind your brain. And so far, it's proven to be an interesting journey.
The ones that I listen to, because there is a common thread, which is, you say, it's the success, it's coming from building something up, achieving what they've achieved. But do you find a thread between all of them? Because I've listened to about 3 or 4 of them only. Do you find that you could say that a person in that situation is of a certain type? And what would that be?
Obsession.
Yeah.
It's complete obsession.
Is it?
And I would say that in myself. Not to compare myself to any of these people, but
you should.
I live by lists. I'm a creature of habit, but I'm obsessed with detail to the level I will argue with somebody over a comma for 5 hours. It's just something that makes you who you are. And in your case, I had blessed to have dinner with you last night, and you're having dinner with me and my family, and it's an amazing dinner. But I also know that you're obsessed with the detail of everything that's going on around you, because this is your entire enterprise.
In order to talk to you about they have to have a sense of trust in you, that
Yeah.
they can talk to you, that they can be open. And I
Yeah.
think that's a huge credit to you, that the people that you work with have that trust in you.
You know, I always say trust is earned.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I'm very fortunate to spend my entire life 14, 15 times a day talking to the CEOs of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest companies in the world, and they have to trust me and I have to trust them. And we talk about things that they don't talk to anybody else about. Why is that? Because the further up the food chain you go, the lonelier it gets. People can't trust everyone around them.
Yeah.
They work for them. They tell them what they want to hear. You need a safe space. You need a safe place. And you need somebody to talk to that doesn't have an agenda. And so that's what I've tried to do my entire life, is to be that person. And so when I'm in Grey Matter, I'm really giving myself to that person to say, it's okay to be
okay.
vulnerable and just
Yeah.
tell me what you really think, because I'm not going to ask you questions that are either asinine or so difficult and probing that you're going to go, well, that felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But what you find is that people ultimately want to tell you a story about themselves because they don't get an opportunity. Even someone like you who's been interviewed hundreds of times, what I'm really interested in is what made you who you are.
Yeah.
Because when people observe you and they look at you, they don't know you, even though they've met you 1,000 times.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept. You can spend days on this.
Yeah.
But I just think the people who make the most interesting subjects are the people who are most interested in other people
Yeah.
and detail.
Yeah.
Detail is everything.
Detail. I
Detail
agree.
is everything.
I agree. But I do ask everyone, and I will ask you, and I think I'm trying to guess that maybe I know the answers, but there might be a few of them, is that if food is something we share, and food is something that alleviates hunger, but it also is comfort. And so I hope you don't need comfort very often, but if you did, is there a food that you would go to for comfort, Declan?
Yeah, I would say there are three.
Okay, yeah, I thought them. Okay, but
Yeah, sorry to give you a very
I'm
long
going to write
answer.
down what I think they are, and then see
Okay,
if
go
mine
for it.
match yours.
Let's see.
Okay, well, we know. It'll be a bit
Well, I think
potato.
you've probably guessed one already.
Maybe, yeah. We talked about the soda bread. Yeah, baked potato and soda bread.
We're big on carbs, apparently.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then-
for a reason.
Look at you, you look gorgeous. Okay, I got two. Well, you tell me.
All right, so my favorite.
Number one would be what?
My number one.
It
if
might
I-
not be any of these, because it might not be a memory. It
Yeah,
could be
yeah.
something you had.
No, my number
like the
one
last
would
week.
definitely be potato, for sure.
Okay.
Without a question. That's easy. And I'm not unique. My number two would be, believe it or not, oatmeal.
That
like
is-
porridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I grew up having it all the time, and I love it, and I have it almost every day. And then my favorite pasta, I'm obsessed with pesto.
Do you?
Obsessed.
Oh, good. Good.
And my favorite pasta is trophy pasta with
trophy.
pine nuts, potatoes, green beans,
Yeah.
and pesto. And maybe some broccoli.
Have you ever had it in Liguria? Have you been to any of those little towns?
I have had
I'm
it all
gonna
over
go
Italy.
there.
It's more special there than anywhere else because it's prepared with love and experience. But I mean, it's my favorite dish.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for that.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Ruthie's Table 4 was produced by Alex Bell, Robbie Hamilton, and Zad Rogers, with Andrew Sang and Bella Salini. This has been an Atomised production for iHeart Media.